All right, and we're live. How's it going, friends and family? I hope everyone's doing all right. Actually, let me know, how are you doing? Give me an update. I know it's been a while since we've talked, and I have the worst excuse in the world. I've been super busy, right? My bandwidth, I was pushed beyond my limits, tackling a lot of different things, and I've been meaning to make this video for weeks now, but I just haven't had the time. And every single time that I had the luxury of perhaps filming this, I would end up on the couch, and 1 second, 10 seconds later, I would be too comfortable to get back up to film. Can you relate to me on that, right? Sometimes it's like, hey, you know you gotta do something, but it's not like essential to survive. So it's kind of like, okay, let me just sit down on the couch for maybe 5 minutes, and then 5 minutes turns into like 60 minutes of like binge watching the most random videos on YouTube. But needless to say, here we are. I'm gonna be referring to this clipboard, and let's just jump right into it because I know I have a lot to talk about, and I'm trying not to spend too much time editing. So yeah, but please do update me on how you're doing. I'm filming this outdoors today. It's March 25th. It's a Thursday. It feels like spring. It's starting to be a little muggy and humid where I'm at, which is weird, and I don't really show my full body in videos, but I'm wearing basketball shorts because it is a little hot today. So, as the title of this video suggests, then I want to talk about jobs, careers, and the idea or the notion of finding fulfillment and purpose through your line of work. So, this might not come as a surprise to those that have been following me since. Because you know how I sporadically make videos here and there, little nuggets and sprinkles of like insights of what I'm up to in my life. Past 10 months, I've been on the job hunt. I've been looking for a career that I can pivot into once I graduate. And one thing that I can say is after doing this for 10 months and treating it like a full-time job, which is really hard because when you're juggling classes, projects, group work, Monday to Saturday, and also having to do these interviews for jobs in the middle of everything, it's how I can best describe it is trying to find a job during this pandemic, during this recession that we're in, has been a soul-draining process. I think I was too young back in 08, 09 to really understand how difficult the job market and the economy was for new graduates. And now I'm about to be a new graduate and I'm understanding the struggles and difficulties. Absolutely soul-draining process. And I'm happy to say in the end, after all my work, determination, effort, that it all worked out, right? I'm pretty happy with how everything panned out. You know, sometimes when a door closes, it's easy to be pissed off and, keep knocking and trying to kick it down and be like, no, this is where I want to go. But sometimes, hey, that door shuts so that you can take one step to the right and be like, yo, that's where I should actually go. Because there's a door that's open and that's the path you should go on. So that's kind of how I feel as things panned out in the end. I wrote down here in my notes that I did a lot more interviews than I would have liked to. I have a spreadsheet that has all of my data points in it, how many rounds of interviews, how many companies I applied to, which roles, and I would have to say off the top of my head, it's over 120. So it's a lot more than I would have liked, and I had the honor of going to several, more than a few dozen final rounds, also known as like Super Days, where you're put up against all the other finalists and candidates. So it's kind of like you get to see who your potential co-workers are in one perspective. But in the other perspective, it's like, hey, these are the ones who are fighting for the same job and we can only take like 2 or 3 of you. Whereas like even just a year ago, we could take all of you, all 15 of you. So that's one thing that kind of bugged me is like, now that recruiting is all like virtual, I feel as if companies are bringing on more potential finalists, because I feel like even like a year or 2 ago, because the companies have to pay for your flights, your accommodations, your food, and reimburse you for anything else. It's costly to recruit a qualified candidate for like a management position. And so they would probably only bring in maybe 4, maybe 5, right? But because everything is virtual, companies don't have to pay for your food, your lodging, or pay you for anything. So now what's happening is they're bringing on like 20 or 30 people to the final round, these super days, for only like 2 spots. So it's been a little annoying, but I know it's the name of the game. You just have to keep fighting through it, show grit, and be resilient. But it was frustrating and annoying to see that time and time and time again. These are some of the biggest companies in the world that we're talking about. These are not just like a local, regional business. I'm talking about companies that employ hundreds of thousands of people, and the positions and roles that I was interviewing for, I guess highly sought after paths, not to sound super conceited. But, you know, what I like to think of is like, I went to a lot of these super rounds, or super days, final rounds, and sometimes, yeah, I did get the offer, and other times, no, I didn't. And very early on in this process and journey, sorry if I'm moving around a little bit, I'm just pretending like, hey, this is my stage, I'm talking to people, welcome to my TED Talk. Very early on when I would get rejected, I would be so upset. It's like, do you remember when you had your first boyfriend or girlfriend, or like, if you haven't, something that you really cherished and it broke, or it was lost or taken away, something, right? Do you remember that devastating feeling that you had? Well, that's how I felt every single time where I would make it to the final round and things didn't work out. I would get so upset about it, and there were a lot of learning lessons that I gained from that, right? And I'm gonna be talking about that right now. But something in me switched where, like, after November of this past year, I kept saying, like, if they don't want me, it's their freaking loss. Because I know what I can bring to the table, I know my value, I know my work ethic, and I know how much experience, like my unique experiences, by the way, that I can bring to kind of like push back and challenge on groupthink that the company might be fixated on. And so I think that's what we should be thinking of as well. If anyone is out there that's also looking for a job, you know how draining this entire process may be. Because if you're not employed, then the idea of covering your basic necessities, such as paying for the bills, food, and etc., gets a lot more complicated, and there's anxieties that arise from that, right? So I understand the struggles. So I think it's healthy for us to keep this kind of framework to say, like, it's their loss, they don't want me, because I know that I'm gonna go to a company that's gonna value me, my time, and appreciate my gifts and skills. So that's what I've been saying to myself, and I feel a lot better. Not sure if anyone else out there can take that and run with it. And by the way, one thing that I noticed is, because I don't film YouTube videos regularly anymore, I tend to say and frequently. So that's one thing that I have on my improvement, inside of my improvement journal that I want to be working on, is to say and a lot less. Which is interesting because in group discussions or presentations or pitches to clients, I don't do the ums and uhs. But when it comes to like YouTube, I kind of think about it like I'm talking to a friend who's sitting in front of me right now. And this is just the way that I would talk outside of that atmosphere. And it's not that I'm being fake or I'm two-faced. I think everyone in this world has multiple appearances in terms of you don't act the same way that you do to a 2-year-old baby or to a puppy, the same way that you would interact with your boss, colleague, or manager, the same way that you would interact with your spouse, right? We all adapt and shift, and we're all a little bit flexible in terms of how we present, how we communicate. And I think a lot of that boils down to emotional intelligence, because you can't convey what you want to say if you're in this exact same manner to everyone. So on that note, just don't take it personal. Remember that it's a numbers game at the end of the day, but more importantly, it's so subjective, the hiring process. Sometimes they might not hire you based on your name, the color of your skin. Obviously they can't say it outright, but they might not like you or the idea of working alongside with you. They might not like your personality, whatever you want to talk about, right? It's very subjective. So eventually you will find the right fit in the place that will value you as a working professional. Now, talking about jobs, I wanted to reflect back on some of my more early endeavors of labor. My first job, I was actually maybe like 4 or 5 years old. I used to go around the neighborhood with a bucket, a rag, and soapy water, and I used to do car washes by hand with a couple of my friends, hustling. Okay, that's pretty funny. The fact that there are people out there that would give us $1 or even $5 to do that, it's kind of funny to look back on and think, right? Because I know that as a young kid, I had the determination, but I was so short, I don't even think I was able to clean anything above the windows. My next gig was, I was a cashier at a small convenience store in DC when I was about 11 to 13 years old. So did that. That was an interesting experience. Something that I wouldn't want to do again in the future, but it was good that I was able to experience rude customers from a very early age. And it's just fascinating to think about as I progressed into an adult. I started thinking more about jobs or the mode of which you make an income. I put more thought into it, right? I think when I was young, you know, in my 18, early 20s, I used to think about your job as being a process of self-discovery, and I prioritized challenges. So if a job allowed me the opportunity to figure out who I am and gave ample opportunities for challenges, sign me the heck up. And I think that really speaks volumes, because when I was young, that's what I prioritized. And now that I'm getting older, I wouldn't even say that much older, because I truly believe that, what do they usually say? It's like 40 is the new 20. Anyways, I'm just about to turn 30 years old and I still feel pretty young. I will say this though, when I was young, I could literally just roll out of bed and just work out without stretching, warming up, and nothing. If I were to do that now, I might crack a back or twist my ankle. So now I have to actually warm up, stretch out before I work out. So I am seeing some differences. My hairline is still intact, thankfully, which is kind of funny because can you imagine me being bald? I don't know, maybe I'll shave my head for the next video. Now that I'm getting older, I think what I prioritize now in a job or a career is my ability to make an impact. I want to be in a role where I can lead a group of people to come together to be a team working towards a common cause or a goal. But I ultimately want to know that at the end of the day, if I'm going to be working 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week, that my work has an impact. Whereas when I was younger, it was more about, it's fine if I'm just a pawn on the chessboard, as long as I'm being challenged and I'm going through this self-discovery process to figure out who I am. Now that I'm older, I know who I am, I know what I want. Now I want to see my work make an impact on the bottom line, onto the lives of the people that I direct, etc. So I guess I wanted to open up that conversation to kind of hear your perspective as well. What do you prioritize in a job or a career, or what's your thought process behind your income sources? Because there are many different perspectives, right? There are people that think of your job as just the place where you go and you exchange your time for money so that you can take that money and pay for the bills. And at home, you can truly do what you love, which are your hobbies, to sleep in, to play video games. Oh, there's Bernie. Bernie! I don't know if you can see him, but Bernie! He's running around, he's having the time of his life. And on the other end, there are people that prioritize, these are the criterias, right? Like, they might look at how easy is the job right? Whereas other people, they might be like, if this job is too easy, I don't want it. I want to be challenged every day. And there are other people that appreciate a work-life balance. And what that means is, are you gonna be on call 24/7? Yeah, technically you might not be working on a Sunday, but are you obligated and kind of nudge that to be responding to emails all day? Or is it one of those deals where when you're off work and you clock out, it's a French goodbye, where you don't even have to say peace to anyone, you're out. And you can check back in tomorrow, and that's where work begins again. Straight up, that's really important to me. If there's no work-life balance, I don't care how impactful it is or what kind of team I'm leading, I don't want a part of it. It's just knowing your boundaries, right? The older that I get, the more that I appreciate knowing that when you're at home, you truly need that time to de-wind and to recharge. Because if you're always on the go and always working, responding to work emails and on your phone constantly, you never have that separation of home and work. And so what happens is it starts affecting everything in your life. I can get into this whole philosophical argument as to why I don't like it. There are others that love it, right? Because they derive pleasure and a sense of worth from their job. So who am I to judge? Other criterias, right? What matters for them, that might be like growth trajectory, like knowing that if you go into this role, you'll start out as an analyst, become an associate, and become a manager, director, VP, knowing that there's a clear vertical line to follow. For other people, they don't care. I'm gonna be an engineer, I wanna stay as an engineer. I'm a data scientist, I wanna stay as a data scientist. I don't wanna manage other data scientists. Let me just crunch the numbers and do analytic work. Maybe it's salary or compensation. Let's be honest, there are those that are truly motivated by how much money you're making at the end of the day. Which is interesting because recently, a bunch of analysts at Goldman Sachs in their investment banking function, they published a PowerPoint letting people know, which everyone knew already, how terrible the work-life balance is for investment bankers, but making a PowerPoint saying like, hey, we work on average 105 hours a week. We only get like 4 hours of sleep. It's terrible. And that's something most people know. And I think it just made it more mainstream because not many people knew what investment banking was until their PowerPoint went all over the news. So, I don't know. Sometimes you do have to sacrifice how much potential money you can make if your job has a really good work-life balance. And that's something that you might want to think about as well, right? Oh, there's a golf course here. There's people driving by in their little carts. That's how you know you made it in life. When you have a golf cart at your own house and you can just drive around with that thing, right? Like, I think about, there was a show back in the day called MTV Cribs, and some of the bigger celebrities, they always had golf carts for within their house. And there was a movie that I used to really like. It was called Garden State. And there was a guy in the movie, spoiler alert, skip ahead 20 seconds, he invented Velcro and he became a millionaire off the patent. And he had a golf cart for inside his mansion. So I don't know, I guess that's one of the things where it's like, hey, you know you made it when you got a golf cart. So moving right along, criteria for careers. Sometimes people appreciate compatibility. Like, am I gonna get along with the people here? My personality, is it a good fit? Are my strengths and gifts gonna be utilized here? Or is this something where I'm just, when I clock in, I'm looking at the time thinking like, oh my gosh, 3 more hours, 20 more minutes. Okay, now I can go home, right? So compatibility is a big one. Or is it the benefits? I feel like in the US, this is really important because the rest of the world, I feel like they understand pay time off, vacation days, sick days, health insurance and everything. But in the US, that's not a given, right? And when you do get PTO or vacation days, you're not at a luxury to just use it whenever you want. Especially when you get up to the management level, you might get like 15, 20, 25 days of PTO, but the moment you start using them all, man, you're gonna get that stink eye, right? It's like, oh really? You gonna use that? All right, I can't wait to do our annual review and to give you feedback on how you were as a worker. Whereas in other countries, man, it's like if you don't use all your PTO, vacation days, and benefits, it's kind of, they look at you like you're weird, right? So benefits, the title, maybe it's the culture, right? I'm not going to name any names, but there are some companies that are world dominant players, but when at the end of the day, when you look at their Glassdoor and you look at the reviews left by the employees, or you talk to someone who works there, they hate their lives. They're working 60 hours a week. The culture is toxic. You name it. So culture. And I feel like the younger the individual is in terms of job seeking, the more important that is. I feel like the older generation, they didn't care. It's one of those things where they just grit their teeth and they work hard and get paid even if they hate their work environment. Whereas us youngins, man, that's real important. So culture. So what matters for you? I did it again right there. But that's what matters for me. I'd love to hear your perspective and maybe allow me to expand my horizons in terms of what I should be prioritizing. So moving right along from that, a couple of things that I want to talk about here is like the book. Okay, so I read a book, not technically read, but I listened to it, an audiobook, and it's called The Art of Not Giving an F by Mark Manson. On a high level, I would say that it's okay. I can't in good faith recommend for people to read it because of how vulgar and the amount of profanity that's used and the generic examples presented in the book to articulate some of the ideas. I think there's really good nuggets of truth and some good stuff in it, but how he packages it, I didn't really like it. So in good faith, I can't recommend for people to read it, but here are some good things about it that I think is a tangible lesson for anyone that's listening to this. Number one is suffering is okay. Sometimes, okay? Not all the time. And that's because delayed gratification. You have to be willing to suffer through something if it means a lot to you. Persevere through pain. And when I was reading that really resonated with me because sometimes in life, I feel like the millennials have been written off and stereotyped as that generation that quits whenever it gets hard. But he emphasizes the point that sometimes we have to be willing to suffer in order to receive a great dividend in the end. The second is emotions are overrated. When you make decisions, when you are interacting in conversations and you conduct yourself through emotions, it might not be the best foot forward or the best light of who you are. Number three is don't try to leave a legacy. Focus on the now. When you focus on the now and the present tense and trying to be the best of who you are today, the legacy part of it will take care of itself. That's really important because I feel like my entire life I'm always thinking about like, what will people remember me as? And that's like super conceited because once I'm dead, nobody will even remember me. So he's talking about how like other people live their lives to leave such a legacy, to be a Wikipedia page. And in the end, they forget who they are in the present tense and they're not able to enjoy the fruits of their labor at all. Because by the time they get there, they die from cancer, old age, or a terrible accident. Other than that book, I know I'm all over the place, but what I'm up to lately. So, talking about the job search, I'm less than 2 months from graduating from my master's program. So that's pretty exciting. And there's another part of me that's like, was it even worth it? And that's for a conversation for another day. Maybe I should talk about that after I graduate. Sorry about that. I had to change locations because as I was in mid-sentence, there came like a group of like 10 people and their dogs. And they were just letting them run around in the park. And it got a little too crazy. To wrap up this video, talking about some of the media that I consumed this week. Oh my gosh, even more dog owners came. This must be some kind of like group because they're just letting all their dogs run around together inside the baseball field. Movie I watched called Hitman Agent June. So freaking good. It's a Korean movie, so if you're not into Korean movies, you might not like this because there's a lot of plot twists. Highly recommended, especially if you're into John Wick, because I felt like this was a John Wick, but in a more comedic light. Very similar, but comedy vibes. I also binge watched an entire Korean drama series. Called Kingdom. Some of you probably already seen it. It's so freaking good. It's on Netflix and it's about zombies. It's so weird to think about. But if you watch that movie Train to Busan and you're kind of into how Koreans interpret zombies, you might like this one because it's different. It's not like The Walking Dead, and it's not like Z Nation or any one of these other zombie adaptations in the Western world. It's the Eastern world's take. It's really good. And for me to say that is pretty noteworthy because I really don't like historical Korean dramas where people are wearing the Yennal Chosun uniforms and everything. I'm not a fan of that. Huge history nerd, but not a fan of history Korean dramas. This is the first one where I actually liked it. And a movie that I liked, but not enough to watch it again, so it's good for that one time to be like, what the heck did I just watch, but never again, is Vivarium. You might like it, you might not like it. Anyways, I guess as I close out this film, to think like this is a movie. This ain't no movie. This is a video that hardly 100 people are gonna watch. As I close out this vlog, that's what's going through my head right now. And I hope that what I talked about today was kind of relatable. If it's not, I would love to hear your input, your advice, your opinion, your thoughts on some of the stuff that I said today. And I guess with that said, hopefully I can produce a video next week because I'm finally done with recruiting and interviewing. Now I just have to finish strong in my academics and my classes, and the times where I feel like, you know, when I sit down on a couch to finally D-wine, I gotta set an alarm and be like, get up so you can film a video now. And yeah, my spirits are high. I'm not happy. I'll be I'm not depressed. I'm not happy right now, but my spirits are high. I have hope for what's to come in the future. Yeah, hopefully this pandemic can be over soon and things can go back to normal. I'm gonna finish eating my lunch and I'll talk to you next time, and thanks for taking the time to watch this and for us to just kick it back and chill.